Well, let's talk about the Supreme Court of the United States of America. And who is that gentleman there? He is actually the Chief Judge or Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. And his name, which you will need to know for the test, I'm sure, is John Roberts. He was appointed by George W. Bush and replaced William Rehnquist. It was kind of a twist, as Sandra Day O'Connor had wanted to retire, and she had announced her retirement, and in the meantime, William Rehnquist passed away. He was the Chief Justice, and so John Roberts was moved up, and instead of replacing Sandra Day O'Connor at her retirement, he replaced Rehnquist and moved right into the spot of Chief Justice or Chief Judge. Sandra Day O'Connor did, in fact, retire and was replaced by, boy, that's a good question. I might have to go back and research that one myself. I don't remember. The U.S. Supreme Court. How many women are on the Supreme Court? And I only showed 2 there. Shame on me. There's the third, and that's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So there are 3 of the 9 justices are women. The first, going back, was Sandra Day O'Connor. She was the first woman appointed by President Reagan. So it would have been in the 80s, really not that long ago, that we finally had a woman appointed to the court. How many justices are on the Supreme Court of the United States? There are 9. Some people might say 8 justices and 1 chief judge or chief justice. And here they are. This is an updated photo. I've the one you guys are looking at, and I'll maybe try to get in and replace it, but it was an older one. They are reluctant to sit for photos. They don't often sit for photos for whatever reason. I imagine when Gorsuch was appointed here recently, they finally were convinced that they needed to sit for photos, and so here you have them. And in order from left to right, you've got Ginsburg, Kagan, Kennedy, Alito, Roberts, Sotomayor, Justice Thomas, Gorsuch, and Breyer. How are they selected for the Supreme Court of the United States? They are appointed by the President with, they call this the advice and consent of the U.S. Senate. Okay? And it's kind of, we had a interesting setup. This last justice that was appointed, who was Gorsuch, that before him, when Obama was ready to leave office, Justice, I can't remember his name now, Antonin Scalia had passed away kind of suddenly, and it was towards the end of the Obama administration, and he appointed a fellow by the name of Merrick Garland, but it was during the presidential contest, and the Senate, which was run by Republicans at the time, refused to vote on the confirmation. They didn't even bring his name forward to vote on his confirmation for the Supreme Court. Instead, they gambled that it wasn't really a gamble, I guess. They really had nothing to lose. In the worst case, Merrick Garland would have been appointed. But they hoped maybe that the outcome of the election might swing their way and that they could appoint or approve a more conservative judge, and that's exactly what happened. After Trump got elected, then he appointed Neil Gorsuch, who most people consider to be a conservative justice, and he was approved by the Senate, but not without a lot of teeth gnashing. How long is the term of the Supreme Court justice? It's for life. So once they get appointed, they can stay in until they die or until they are retire. They can be ruled like incapable, lack the capacity. I think there have been a couple of times in the history of the United States, not many, where they have actually had to dismiss or there's a process to go through to get rid of. I hate to use the terminology, sounds kind of rough, but to get rid of a justice that maybe is unable to fulfill their obligations, mental issues, whatever the case may be. The Montana Supreme Court is 7 people. And I can't say I know all the names here. That one's Beth Baker, I believe. I looked that up. McKinnon, I think that's McGrath. This guy I know. That's Judge Sandifer, and I know him. He actually started his career as a police officer here in Havre. And no, I didn't get arrested by him or anything like that. But at the time, I was pretty good friends with who was the chief of police here in town, and the assistant chief. And they both, of course, knew Judge Sandifer. He was a police officer at the time. He later went on to law school and became a district judge in Great Falls, and then ultimately moved to the Supreme Court of the state. So does have a Havre tie, and we've had some Havre ties. Judge Warner was in there not too long ago, and there have been a couple others from Havre. So that's the end of the Supreme Court slideshow.